Hi guys, my name is Steve B. I want to come to you on this beautiful spring, it's still spring day, June 16th, 2026. I want to talk a little bit about staying sober for today, and I thought a good topic for today would be um, helping others, and after all, isn't that what recovery is all about? Learning how to help others, and that need it, and I, I wake up every day and it's like, what's my purpose for today? Well, the purpose for today is the same one as it was yesterday, to help others any way I could, and I like to focus it in on, well, helping others to get sober and clean, and but it's helping others in any way that we can, because God put us here, I believe, to help others. If we have a purpose in the world, that purpose is to help others, and I can't think of anything better, to do on any given day, and I try to do that. I try not to toot my own horn, because nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear some guy bragging about how much he does. A lot of times when I hear these topics come up, it's like, people go on a rant of how much they help others, how, and after a while you start thinking, well, geez, if you're that perfect, what are you doing here? Nobody's perfect. Nobody does it perfect. But we could strive for that. My role model of helping others is Jesus, and Jesus was not an alcoholic, but I am. So I have that extra added benefit of having meetings to help others. I could go to a meeting. Where am I going to find somebody that needs help? At a meeting. At a meeting, I'm going to find them. And guaranteed somebody at that meeting needs some kind of help uh, in some way. And that's where I'm going to find all these people, and I'm going to have a lot of opportunity to help others, in some way or another. I can't tell you exactly how. You go to a meeting and you hear the sadness come out, you hear the hurt come out, you hear all that stuff, and I don't know. Helping others can be as little as opening the door for them, as little as making a pot of coffee for the group, as little as passing out the books if it's a step meeting or any other kind of meeting that it requires a book. Passing them out, setting up the chairs for the meeting. I've done all this stuff. And there's always something. There's always something. A kind word. God, you can't say enough about a kind word. And a kind word is gonna go far in this world, because you don't have a lot of that. Even the people that are running the country and stuff, you hear nothing but foul talk, selfishness, and condemnation, all these terrible things, and that's the world. At least that's the America that I'm living in right now, and I pray for it. I pray for we get change. I pray that we get change all the way up and all the way down, and we need it. We need it, because the person and people that are in it now don't care about anything but themselves. But again, back to recovery. Well, what can I say? Recovery is the most fantastic thing in the world, and I'm gonna find people that are gonna need help, and on any given day, I need help sometimes. Every day is not a great day. You know, what do they say? A good day is when everything goes wrong and I don't. Everything goes right and I don't drink. A great day is when everything goes wrong and I still don't drink. Keep it in that perspective, because you know, God is going to be there for me when I need Him. And God is the biggest part of my program there is. I don't know how I did this program without God. I did in the beginning, but I had no idea that They say, well, you need a higher power. You need God in your life. And I grew up with a condemning God, with a God that did nothing but judge me and had no affection for me and didn't care one way or another about me. And I'm here today to say that, my God today is a loving, caring, generous uh, God who wants nothing but the best for me and you. you know and if you don't have a higher power, that's the best thing that ever came to me in my recovery. Putting down the drink and stopping and staying sober. I've been sober for a very long time now, going on 34 years. But the best thing that came out of my recovery was that, and a relationship with God, my higher power, Jesus, my higher power. I'm here to tell you that He wants to help you too. And don't be prejudiced as long as I was, to say, no, I don't want a God or a higher power. I'm going to do this without that. And I have never done it without that. I used to think that I was doing it without that, but I was fiercely wrong. God was there every step of the way. God was there to help me through the good times and the hard times. There was a gentleman, and I quote this quite a bit, that I knew it in AA, and he used to say, I have good days and I have learning days. You know, Good days and learning days. And it's not fun to go through the learning days, but I'll tell you what, they rise us to another plane, and God bestows wisdom on you that you normally wouldn't have, you know. And I ask Him to walk with me every day, and I don't always feel it, but my recovery and my spirituality isn't about feeling. It's about knowing. It's about just having that awareness that, yes, I do have uh, that today, and life is very good to me today. And honest, I couldn't do this thing alone, and I'd never try. Uh, Beautiful day down here. I was 72, something like that. It's windy, but it's a gentle wind. It's not cold. Still got my shorts on, got my sports shirt on. Yeah, not at all a bad day. Went to visit. Well, I visit. We had breakfast with my dad. My dad of 93 years old, and my daughter, and my oldest son, and my sister. And it was a great time. We had a great time. Went to the diner near where he's living now, and oh boy, I couldn't fit another thing in me. Food was excellent. The company was excellent. I had a good time. I'm glad I went. He had been wanting to do this for a while, and I give my daughter Olivia, was kind of pushing this thing, and my son Michael was pushing this thing. I'm glad they did, because otherwise I probably wouldn't do it, But I'm glad I did, and it was pretty awesome visiting with him. And breakfast, it was good. I normally have my fruit and yogurt, and but not today, not today. But I'm glad I switched it up a little bit. I got to remember to get coffee later. Not that coffee I could live without it, but I like it in the morning, and when it's not there, I get a little upset. I love coffee in the morning. That's pretty much all I drink it. You know, um, yeah, I like a coffee in the morning. And sometimes at night too. People say, "Well, doesn't that keep you up at night?" Nope, 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 nope. It doesn't affect me like that. I don't get all wired up and stuff. If anything, I think coffee relaxes me. I don't know how that is, but I just think that that's what it does for me. So helping others, I can help others any given day. I want to help others, and what a beautiful, marvelous. thing to be able to help others. You know, I think God probably makes God smile more than anything else. You know, helping them. You know, smile. They don't have one, give them yours. I like to. I don't know. I don't know. You know, like when you ask someone how they're doing, you know, be genuine, be sincere. You know, not just not just not care, but be genuine and have a real reason why you're asking them, and to care that they have a good day like you're having a good day. You know, if I'm having a good day, you could thank yourself for that, because you know what, we make or don't make our days. But anyway, I'm glad you guys checked in. You know, glad you listened and tuned in today, and love you all. Leave a chat if you want. You know, love to talk to you. God bless.